Good morning, good people. Welcome to Eliot Chapel. I'm Trina Marlowe Precy, and I'm serving as your liturgist today. We are an intentional community whose shared work is to open our doors to all races, genders, and sexual orientations. We strive to welcome people of all creeds and beliefs, all economic circumstances, and every type of family. Our vision is to create a just world through vibrant, beloved community. If you are with us for the first time, thank you for choosing to be here. We hope you feel warmly welcomed and that the message speaks to your heart. If you received a guest card on your way in, you may complete the card and put it in the offertory basket. This will help us connect with you. If you're visiting online, send us an email to welcome@eliotchapel.org so that we may personally welcome you as well. We're happy to answer any questions you might have about Eliot Chapel or about Unitarian Universalism in general. And although we can't gather for coffee hour in person, everyone's invited to go online this afternoon at 12:30 for our Zoom coffee hour. The link is in our website and in the Eliot Weekly email. If you're here in person, after the service, you're welcome to spread out safely for conversation, either in here or in Adams Hall or outside. If you have a hymnal with you, please leave it in your seat instead of carrying them out today. And one more item of information, our new interim, Reverend Doug Watkins, has arrived. He started work on Monday, August the 1st. Yay! Look for his introductory video that should be out soon. And we're looking forward to his first sermon on August the 21st.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Krista Taves. I am so pleased to be your minister of congregational life. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice to symbolize that we are entering sacred space and preparing our hearts for the blessing of beloved community. Today, we light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. Our opening words are "In Heaven" by Reverend Mark Ballatini. Ah, it's true, when our ancestors spoke of heaven, they were speaking of this moment. When they went on about nirvana, they imagined a time like this. When they sang of paradise, it was this morning they imagined. A time when all the mysteries of life and death are blended in a community of praise, when the bones of ancient lovers are given flesh again in our own bodies. Teachers of long ago speaking of love and truth. Once more in lives so ordinary, they are extraordinary. Blessed is our breath, in and out. Blessed is our sitting, our fidgeting, our movement. Blessed is our heartbeat, echoing the pounding alleluias of the distant stars. Blessed is the silence that is presence, not absence. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 40, "The Morning Hangs a Signal."
Whoa!
Join me now in the unison reading of our covenant that's in your order of service. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create a beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be. To listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
This morning, our subject is truth, the freeing power of truth. And one of the most famous fables about the power of truth-telling is the Emperor's New Clothes, which many of us have heard, but let us hear it this morning as if for the first time. This version was adapted by Cindy McKay from the story of Hans Christian Andersen. Once upon a time, there lived an emperor. He was a rich emperor. He was a handsome emperor. But most of all, he was a well-dressed emperor. The emperor loved to parade through town, showing off his fine and fancy clothes. And he would wave to the townspeople and say, "I like fine pants. I like them, I do. I like fine new hats and new socks and new shoes." One day, two strangers came to town, claiming to be weavers of a fabulous gold cloth. "Our golden cloth has a magical quality," said the first. "Some people can't even see it," said the second. The emperor was surprised by this. "Some cannot see it? How can that be? Who cannot see it? I hope it's not me." The weavers assured the emperor he would see the magical golden cloth because he was clearly a wise emperor, and the cloth was invisible only to a fool. This gave the emperor an idea. He could use this magical cloth to learn who in his town was a fool. So he said to the weavers, "You will make it for me. I must see what you do. I will pay you with gold. You will show me a fool." The emperor gave the weavers chests full of gold, and then he sent them off to make their magical cloth, telling them, "Don't work on anything else." As he waited for the cloth to be done, the emperor thought to himself, "I want to go see it. I have to. I do. But if I don't see it, then am I a fool?" So the emperor sent his faithful servant Fred to check on the progress of the cloth. When Fred arrived, the weavers showed him the weaving loom and told him they were weaving the magical cloth with threads of gold and silk. But Fred saw nothing at all. And as he looked, he thought to himself, "Oh no, I see nothing. No cloth do I see, but I will not say so. No fool will I be." Fred rushed back and told the emperor of the wondrous beauty of the golden cloth. Excited by the news, the emperor gave the weavers more gold and told them to weave the cloth faster. The next day, as he waited for the cloth to be finished, the emperor thought, "I'm sure I will see it. I'll see it like Fred. I will go and see it. But first, I'll send Ted." So Ted, another faithful servant, was sent to check on the progress of the cloth. The weavers told Ted that surely a man as wise as he could see that the cloth was almost completed. Ted, however, saw nothing at all. As he looked, he thought to himself, "I really see nothing. No cloth do I see, but I will not say so. No fool will I be." So Ted hurried back and told the emperor of the splendor of the golden cloth. So excited was the emperor that he paid the weavers even more gold to finish weaving the cloth the very next day. The next morning, the emperor woke up bright and early. Oh, it's time for a look. It's a thing I must do. I know I will see it, for I am no fool. The emperor, with 4 faithful servants, set out to see the cloth. The weavers pointed to the loom and smiled. The weavers said that surely men as wise as the emperor and his servants would be able to see the finished cloth in all its glory. The emperor and his servants, however, saw nothing at all. They saw there was nothing. No cloth could they see, but they would not say so. No fool would they be. Each trusted servant praised the beauty of the cloth he did not see. "It's brilliant," said the first. "It's amazing," said the second. "It's dazzling," said the third. "It's stunning," said the fourth. And the emperor eagerly agreed with their descriptions. The next day, the emperor paraded through town as he had so often before. He was not only excited to show off his new clothes, but to learn who in his town was a fool. As he strutted down the street, a crowd began to gather. Never before had so many people come out to see the emperor's new clothes. And since no one in town wanted to be thought a fool, no one would admit there were no clothes to be seen. "He looks good in gold," people said with a grin. "And see how those pants help make him look so thin." Then at last, a tiny voice spoke up from the crowd. It was the voice of a child. It was the voice of truth. "I do not see pants or a cape made of gold. He better get dressed or he may catch a cold." The townspeople could hardly believe their ears. Did that foolish child think the emperor was parading through town in his underwear? The child pointed to the emperor. "You say he is dressed, but nothing is there. He has nothing on but his blue underwear." Then another small voice spoke up, agreeing with the child about the emperor's clothes. Then another and another. The small voices swelled. Then big voices joined until finally the whole town spoke the truth. "We do not see clothes, just a belly that's bare. We do not see clothes because no clothes are there." Soon everyone was seeing what was really there and what was not. As laughter began to fill the air, the emperor blushed and hid behind a bush. He had set out to discover who in his town was a fool, and now he knew. "I looked for a fool. Now at last I can see. I found the town fool, and the town fool is me." And that is the end of our story. I invite you to join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Our prayer this morning is called "Let Us Rest in This Peace" by Reverend Victoria Weinstein. Spirit of life, love, and truth, we have gathered again out of our separateness to know that we are not alone. In our fears, we are not alone. In our truths, we are not alone. In our grasping for peace, finding it in fleeting moments and losing it again to some turmoil of the mind and heart, we are not alone. In our cynical moments, our wonderings, is this all there is? Is this the best we can do? We are not alone. In our pain, we are not alone. And so we dwell in you, Spirit of truth, for this brief time, willing to be held here in an immense and eternal love whose origins we do not know, whose reality is irresistible. It calls us on, It reaches between us to fill spaces. It consoles the grieving. It calms the anxious. It gives new vision to eyes dimmed by tears and exhaustion. Let us enter into a moment of silence for the deepest prayers of our hearts. Let us speak the names of those we would hold in prayer. Spirit of life, open our ears to deeper truth, for it makes a place in our hearts as hope. Let us rest in this peace and be held here. Amen and blessed be. Please remain seated for our meditative hymn, Spirit of Life, of Truth, of Power.
Every Sunday, Eliot Chapel shares half of our offertory with an organization whose work reflects our shared values. In August, we're sharing our offerings with the Kirkwood Area Every Child Promise, or CATCHUP for short. The promise is that every child and family are prepared for success as they enter kindergarten. CATCHUP helps families connect to resources to meet their basic needs, provides a clothing and supply closet for young children, and coordinates with KirkCare, parents as teachers, Kirkwood Public Library, and the Kirkwood School District to provide holistic support for families. Eliot has long supported CATCHUP, and we're proud to do so again this year. If you're worshiping in person, you may place cash or a check in the basket. For the tech-loving among us, scan the QR code that's in your order of service. If you're joining us online, please go to our website and click on the Giving tab and choose Shared Plate. You have to type it in as all one word. Let us be good neighbors and a generous people. Will the greeters please come forward and with the baskets? Right. I invite the greeters to come forward. Please join me in the dedication of these gifts. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and justice, we dedicate these, and these are offerings. Our reading today is titled Tila, and it's by Reverend Mark Bellatini. I was curious when Krista chose this piece, so I looked it up and found out that Tila is a Hebrew phrase, sorry, my mouth's not working this morning, that means praise to God. I couldn't find a definite pronunciation, so please excuse any errors I make. Wikipedia tells us that Hilla is a city in central Iraq on the Hilla branch of the Euphrates River, about 60 miles south of Baghdad. It's the capital of Babylon province and is located adjacent to the ancient city of Babylon. This is a predominantly agricultural region that is well irrigated with water from the river's Gila Canal, producing a wide range of crops, fruit, and textiles. The name Gila is probably derived from the Arabic word for beauty. And a point of interest about the author, Mark Bellatini, is that he served as chair of the UUA Hymn Book Resources Commission, which produced our Singing in the Living Tradition hymnal way back in 1993. Mark is currently the minister of the First UU Church in Columbia, Ohio. Baruch atah, Emeth. Blessed are you, O truth. Like the fabled Moses, I too can never claim to have seen you face to face. Too often, I've hung my own face on you and pretended that I know something I do not. Indeed, my most honest heart confesses that at most, I have only caught the briefest glimpse of you at the very edge of my eye, and only when I got out of my own way, my own rush, my own fury. I sense your cool shadow on me when I grow hot from the tears I've been holding back, or when I notice the sadness or whimsy hiding in the silent eyes of those around me. I sense your closeness when I gaze at a star suddenly unveiled by a toreador cloud, or catch at an early yellowness in the leaves of the oak. It's then I feel a brush of wings nearby and realize that I am only a small part of it all. Then I know that I am not the great high power of the world, but only a puff of breath hidden amid the mighty blast of the great whirlwind called the universe. Like a lacewing barely floating on the tip of a small blade of green grass is my life, from beginning to end, a short footnote to a vast essay of stars and space unbounded, an essay neither signed nor finally symbolic. And yet this truth, your truth, is no sadness but a joy, no lack but a blessing, like the sight of a child at play, totally absorbed in the moment and glad. Blessed are you, O truth, who plays in the silence like a child in the waves of an infinite sea. Baruch atah, Emeth.
If there ever was a time when we were surrounded by emperors with no clothes, this might be one of them. Truth itself seems to be at stake every day, every minute, every second. Unless you live under a rock, and I won't judge you if you do, this is an era that will go down in history because we are in a fierce struggle for truth. What truth is, what truth means, what truth asks of us, whose truths get told, whose truths are believed, whose truths matter. This past Tuesday was Missouri's primary. How many of your mailboxes have been stuffed with campaign flyers for weeks and weeks? If you want to get a sense of where we are at in the struggle for truth, campaign flyers are a great place to start, because candidates will try to sway your vote, and they use code, phrases, and trigger words that are part of a carefully packaged worldview that is supposed to take you to a particular truth and influence where you put your X in the box. In my district, we got almost no Democratic flyers. It was all Republican. And in my district, the Republican state house candidates were out conservativing each other. And they went straight for the common issues: gun rights, abortion bans, lowering taxes, cutting government waste, and getting rid of critical race theory. Every one of these issues wrapped together pointed to a particular understanding of what is true and what that truth asks of us. I did notice that neither of them ever mentioned the emperor who has no clothes. There are places of truth they did not want to point at. One of the coolest flyers I got, yeah, flyers can be cool. One of the coolest flyers I got was from a PAC owned by the Koch brothers, who are a major Republican donor, and it was aimed at Democrats who might be considering a Republican ticket. I thought it pretty interesting what they thought a liberal would be interested in. They attacked a Republican state house candidate for not paying her taxes or voting, which are really important issues to many liberals. It was clear who the party brass thought they were talking to and what truths would influence their vote. In politics, as we know, truth is elastic. It stretches and contracts depending on the strategies being used, which often have to pivot in a heartbeat. The wrong facts revealed by the right people in the right way can cripple you. Many of us, for instance, are hoping that the truths revealed in the January 6th House Committee hearings will lead to real accountability, right? We're hoping. And we're also terrified that it won't. The right counter-truths, done in the right time frame and in the right media, can bring the most smitten leader back up to the playing field. So yeah, we are in a struggle for truth, for whose understanding of reality gets to prevail. And this struggle has the power to shape what's possible for us, what is possible for our kids, what's possible for our city, the environment, women, sexual and gender minorities, disabled people, people of color, indigenous people, the poor, everyone sitting in this room. The power of truth. Today we're talking about the power of truth in our complex time. As Unitarian Universalists, we have often proclaimed that the truth sets us free. For through most of our Unitarian and Universalist history, we have trusted that when you share the truth, proclaim the truth, live the truth, people are changed, the world is changed, and justice prevails. Look at our fourth principle. We covenant to affirm and promote the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. If you're new to Unitarian Universalism, our 7 principles are at the heart of our faith. They are our guideposts for ethical living, transformation, and wholeness. But in a time when the truth is so politicized, how do we proclaim this anymore? With the issue of truth itself like plasticine, it has been diced and sliced through systems of oppression that dehumanize and turn us into servants of a falling empire. And I believe that's what we're in. We are in a falling empire. So I'm going to confess something to you. I'm getting heartbroken and cynical. I'm getting heartbroken and cynical. I know some of you are as well because we have spoken of this often. We're getting heartbroken and cynical about the power of truth to make things right. It feels like we are in a crowd watching an emperor parade around in blue underwear. And all around us, people are cheering at how stately he is. And we're wondering, who the hell believes this? Right? Who has the courage to say, hello, the emperor has no clothes, see? How many of us have probably fantasized about being that child who has the courage to say what's really happening, right? We all want to be the truth teller. We want to be the good person who opens other people's eyes. But there are so many examples we can point to when the truth doesn't matter. It didn't matter to voters. It didn't matter to our legislators. It doesn't matter to those with power. We're trying to hang on and commit to the spiritual practice of hope. Hope that truth will be restored, that truth will lead to justice and transform our society in ways that we have always believed will create healing, wholeness, and peace. It's what we teach our children. It's what we were taught. We teach our children that honesty is a virtue, that an honest heart is a good heart. We reward and praise them when they tell the truth. We want them to experience that truth really matters. And we want truth to anchor all of us in how we love each other and hold each other throughout our whole lives. In our time, what's become clear to me is that truth has become a discipline that must be chosen. It's a spiritual discipline that we need to be able to choose even when faced with so many really heartbreaking ways that it's not being honored at this time. I want to share with you a story from our Unitarian history, a time when our Unitarian ancestors refused to shut up, refused to stop proclaiming their truth, even when there were deadly consequences. And I've got to warn you, this doesn't have the happiest ending. Okay, so be prepared for that, okay? You have to look for the good stuff and a lot of bad stuff. So maybe that makes it the perfect story for us. Have faith. It does get us somewhere closer to our conviction that truth grounds us in the transformative power of love. So we're going way back to Western Europe in the 1550s. I mean, way back. A pretty potent time. Another era of fierce struggle around what is true. This was the era of the Protestant Reformation that created Protestantism in the late 1400s and the Radical Reformation that created our faith tradition in the early 1500s. For those of you who aren't history buff, here is a 1-minute recap of one of the biggest moments in European history. In the late 1400s, there was only one church in Western Europe, the Roman Catholic Church, which was all-powerful. Church and state completely merged. And many people became very disillusioned with its corruption, and they protested. Hence, Protestantism, protest. Martin Luther, who was a priest, captured their resentments on paper and made a series of proclamations. And this proclamation, he started a theological protest with massive political implications. Lots of people died for this, often in really, really horrific and public ways. Pretty awful. But the Protestant church was formed, and there were now 2 Christian churches. And then came the Radical Reformation in the early 1500s that said the first Reformation didn't go far enough. There was still work to be done. And that is when we emerged, along with the Baptists, Mennonites, Doukhobors, Amish, Dutch Reform, and more. We are all siblings. The Unitarians' claim to fame was that Jesus was not God. The whole Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Trinity thing was a lie. It was a heresy. And this idea reached Poland in 1550 and was welcomed by the Catholic humanists. Yes, there are Catholic humanists. and they were questioning what their church had become. And they called themselves Arians, not A-R-Y-A-N-S, like the white supremacists, but A-R-I-A-N-S, Arians, after Arius, the 4th century theologian who said that Jesus wasn't God and lost his battle for that truth. It resurrected through them in the 1500s. And they got all kinds of flack for that. So many of our people burned at the stake and all kinds of really, really awful, horrific things for the truth they professed, but they wouldn't shut up. In 1573, something really big happened. There was an open-minded king who took the throne. And the Polish National Assembly passed the Warsaw Confederation. And it was so radical. It hadn't existed before. And this was that it proclaimed that there was a right to religious freedom. Radical reformers from all over Europe fled their persecution and went to Poland to find sanctuary. The Aryan community grew like crazy. They actually formed their own town called Krakow, which became the center of Unitarian thought in Europe. It became a center for our schools, our libraries, our churches, and they were super big into publishing houses, seeing it as the medium to get out your truth. Because the printing press was still new. It was an invention that shook everything up. And our ancestors published countless flyers, books, articles, and sermons about their beliefs, and they shared it absolutely everywhere. It was just a big old Unitarian dump, right? And Krakow now was the center of Unitarian thought, and they believed they had a divine mission to share that truth that had liberated them with everyone. In 1576, Faustus Socinus arrived from Italy, fleeing persecution. And he was a charismatic theologian, writer, and speaker, and he helped them to take the next step as a faith formation. He dismissed the idea that human beings were born sinful and that Jesus died for our sins. He proclaimed that you could not take any human life. You were not to pursue wealth or public office because you would be corrupted. You achieved eternal life through knowing and sharing God in acts of kindness, humility, generosity, and prayer. It may have been the first time that any Christian community said it's more important how you live than what you believe. But unfortunately, the winds of tolerance returned in a conservative Catholic wave. Poland and its leaders were done with all these radicals coming into their country, and they considered our ancestors the most dangerous because of our position on the Trinity. And things got really bad after 1600. Leaders were executed, homes, churches, and graves were ransacked. In 1638, the Polish Senate ordered the destruction of Krakow, especially its printing presses. They wanted to stop the flow of those truths. And that really put a damper on things. I mean, just ask our former president how Twitter affected him when he couldn't post anymore. Okay, it was the same kind of thing. And the Polish National Senate decreed, finally, that our ancestors had to renounce their faith or leave. Refusal meant execution. Almost immediately, people began renouncing their faith. They didn't want to leave their homes. They didn't want to leave their country. But a core refused. They still hoped that the truth would prevail. They still wanted to be that child in the street proclaiming that the emperor has no clothes, and they wanted to believe that many would join them when they did. So when they had all these awful things happen to them, what did they do? They had one answer when faced with intolerance. They kept writing, they kept talking, always talking about what they believed and how it had set them free. You know Pete Seeger's song, If I Had a Hammer? Well, they hammered. They hammered in the morning, they hammered in the evening, they hammered all over the land. And when the violence erupted, their first response was to invite their persecutors to talk. They would do this after an execution, after a school burning, after mobs tore up their town, when their graves were desecrated. Let's get together and talk. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the courage and faith that took? There was this deep trust that if they just kept hammering away with their truth, those who persecuted them would say, "Oh my goodness, we were so wrong. We'll stop burning you at the stake, okay? We'll stop smashing your presses. Oh, we're sorry. You can be who you are called to be." So there they were with this looming decree, forcing them out of Poland, sitting at the table with Catholic leaders, giving it one more try. They defended their faith with everything they had, and there are reports that there were some tears and some softened hearts. But do you think anyone changed their mind? Anyone with power changed their mind? No, they didn't. Those who refused to renounce their faith scattered to Transylvania, East Prussia, Germany, Holland, wherever they hoped it would be safe. Unitarianism in Poland was dead. So yeah, it's a sad story. But I warned you, right? I warned you. From the outside, this looks like a total tragedy. And it was. It was a terrible tragedy. But let's look at some of the truths about the 100 years that our ancestors were privileged to have in the town of Rakow. 100 years of an increasingly unified community, committed to peace, love, justice, curiosity, and knowledge. A community that raised its children to love peace. One of the first churches to understand salvation is happening by our actions, not our beliefs. And a community that saturated Europe with its ideas about what it means to be a person of faith and how we connect to God. You have to remember, this is before TV or radio or smartphones. The printed word was it. It was all powerful. And Unitarian thought had literally dropped into every community. You couldn't burn everything that was out there. When you killed the human, you couldn't kill their ideas, which had spread far beyond Poland. And when they were exiled and had to leave, those ideas just kept spreading. You couldn't kill them off with a stick. This is the thing. Our ancestors never saw themselves as being just for themselves. They were there to serve their love for God and their love for humanity. So while it could look like all had been for nothing, which happens when you hone in on just those hard years, like could happen for us if we hone in on just our hard years, when you take the long view, their legacy is still with us, 100, 400 years later. In fact, they wouldn't shut up. They kept hammering their truth upon the hearts of all those who might listen. And that is the reason we are here, still here in 2022 in Kirkwood, Missouri, because they would not shut up. So when we doubt that truth matters anymore, look up, take the long view. We never know where truth is going to land and how it transforms and what it will change. Let's reflect on our reading this morning by Reverend Mark Bellatini. Blessed are you, O truth. I have only caught the briefest glimpse of you at the very edge of my eyes. And only when I get out of my own way, my own rush, my own fury, I sense your closeness. I feel the brush of wings nearby. This truth, your truth, is no sadness but a joy, no lack but a blessing. Blessed are you, O truth. We were blessed this week by a rush of wings. How many of you tuned into the Kansas primary on Tuesday? Pretty big deal. Following the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which means abortion is no longer a civil right in our country, we lamented, we wailed, we cried. We have been so afraid, and there is still much to fear. But in Kansas, a constitutional amendment was put on the Kansas ballot to open the door to a complete abortion ban. Money flowed into Kansas from both sides. Think tanks worked up the messaging they hoped would hold the truth in a way that it could be heard, in a way they wanted it to be heard. And in this deep red state, with an overwhelming majority heard the truth and chose to protect the right to an abortion. This deep red state protected all those who can bear children and those who love them. So my first thought, of course, is, well, what kind of a constitutional amendment do we need to put on the ballot, right? We don't know. One can hope. But this is what I want to hold up for us right now in this moment. Let us never doubt the power of truth. Even in the darkest moment when our hearts are breaking and doubts flood our spirit, let us proclaim our truth. Let us share it with our children, our loved ones, our community, our nation. Let us hammer our truth. Let us ring it like a bell. Let us live into the legacy of our ancestors and never, ever shut up. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. Now, guess what we're going to sing next? If I Had a Hammer by Pete Seeger. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for this hymn, and let us sing it like we mean it. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the fire of commitment, or the cleansing love of this beloved community. These we carry together until we are together again. Please be seated for the postlude. And all of you, go in peace.